Welcome back, everyone, to a special episode of Ops, episode 14. And we're going to talk about my victory at the Gateway Open in Collinsville, Illinois, where I took first place, best general with World Eaters. Now, this was no easy feat. It was very challenging to go through every single army that I went through. But today, we're going to do a entire breakdown. If you want to watch my list and check out what exactly I ran at the event, please make sure to go check out Ops episode 13. I do an entire breakdown of what I was going to use, how I was going to use it, and I think I did exactly what I said on the previous episode. I'll make sure to put a link in the description section. Go check it out and stay tuned as I break down my big victory at the Gateway Open. All right, so real quickly, I'm going to give you a breakdown of the beginning of the placings. As you can see here, I'm General Slaughter, aka my official government name, right here, first place. World Eaters, I got a 20, 19, 20, 20, and 20. For those of you who haven't been to a team event, right, the maximum amount of points you can get is 20 at the event, meaning you had a spread of 55 points or more over your opponent. So I did very, very well. I only dropped one, and I'll let you know exactly where I dropped that. And it's always very ironic that it happens to armies that you tend to play as well. So, and you go in there thinking, I know this very well. I know this army very well, but he was a very good player. And actually, that team ended up going fourth overall. So, I'm going to go ahead and break down everything at the Gateway Open. My victory going first, best general, beating out a couple of very good players, amazing players, right? Like Jack Harpster came in second, Chris Green, Josh Wilson with another World Eaters list, right? So, pretty exciting. Also, a Justin Harris with Depthus Custodes and Imperial Knights in sixth place. But this is all about me and World Eaters today, and I'm going to make sure that we break down the entire list. So give me one moment. All right. So first matchup that we're going to talk about today is TJ was an incredible, incredible opponent. Matter of fact, I can't say enough about this location. Shout out to Doug. Shout out to JD from Away Games. Doug is obviously the head judge of the Gateway Open. And wonderful, wonderful event. Shout out to every single participant there. All of my opponents were absolutely so sweet, very nice, very candid, uh, played the game right, didn't have any issues whatsoever. It's very rare, but I had a very, very fun time in my path to victory. So I am very, very happy about this victory. This is actually my second time getting best general. My first time getting best general was with Orks 2 years ago. So 2 years later in 2024, I obtained another victory with World Eaters for best general at a team's event. So shout out to TJ once again. What a wonderful opponent, wonderful individual. Now, this individual had Shield Host. It was a very scary list. I think all of the lists were very scary. People were using things that were exactly what the meta is about, right? Some of the best things in the meta. TJ had a Blade Champion, a Shield Captain in Alara's Terminator armor. He also had Valerian, which is the best model in the Custodes, and it's not actually a Custodes model. ironically, right? He also had Custodian Guard, some Terminators. He had 3 Terminators, 2 Caladius Grav Tanks, a unit of Wardens, some Prosecutors, basically to hold objectives and get, points for him, things like that. And that's how he used it throughout the event. And then he did Deep Strike on the 2 Venatari units. So he held them back in reserves, and he placed the Land Raider on the table. So very quickly, I'm going to go throughout what exactly happened through the event. He had the Blade Champion attached to, I want to say, the Custodian Guards, right? Very scary unit, especially for the Blade Champion. He has a lot of abilities, a lot of attacks, and he can do a lot of damage to my 8-bound units. So I was able, in the beginning, I actually got first turn against him. So he spread out his army very thin, which I felt like was the big mistake that he made in his deployment. He ended up putting his Wardens. So we were playing on Scorched Earth using, so that was a primary mission. The mission rule was Inspired Leadership and Crucible of Battle. So that was mission P in the Pariah Nexus Tournament Companion Pack 1.1. So we were playing on Crucible of Battle. He was on the long table edge on the right side, or his left side, however you want to look at it, but he was to my right. And he spread out very thin. He actually put his Warden unit on the short table edge left side. He put his Land Raider in the center, and he put both of his Caladius on the right side. So that really gave me a big advantage at the beginning of the game, because I was able to see his placements and see exactly what he was doing and how he was going to play out the game. When you have an elite army like that, like Custodes, obviously I know what it is to play an elite army with only having 23 models, because I have, the Lord of Skulls. I have 12 Exalted 8-bound, 3 regular 8-bound, a unit of Jackals, a unit of 2 Spawn, Lord on Juggernaut, Lord of Invacatus, and Angron. So it's very easy to mess up deployment and try to separate your army out, trying to get everything on the board. But remember, as a great strategy and as a great strategist, you never want to run thin, especially as an elite army. You want to make sure that you try to castle as much as you can, and not in the typical castling formation where you keep everything grouped together in one location and you're taking like a 10-inch bubble or something like that, right? But you want to take half of the board and extend it out to the end of the board, right? You don't want to run it thin, even on a short table edge. You want to take just one half, put your army there, right? Put your faster units where you can maneuver to the empty ends, right? So if you have like an Angron Exalted 8-bound with the Invacatus and another Exalted 8-bound that you can scout, just in case you have to get an objective marker that is on the, let's just go ahead and say on the right side, if you're doing the short table edge, right? And you're deploying on the left side of the short table edge, you want to make sure things are fast to get out there, right? They can get into position and stage on the board very quickly if you have to take things away from your enemy units, if you have to flank units. Maybe he threw a couple of scouting units over there holding objectives. You want to be able to get those units out there as quick as possible so you can take that all away from them. So he did that. He spread very thin. I had the Lord of Skulls. He left them in the middle. He left the Caladius on the side. So I was able to move up with the Lord of Skulls. As you know, the Lord of Skulls has a 60-inch weapon, right? That can fire its strength 14, AP 3 damage flat. I was able to put that entire weapon loadout, which is the Demon Gore cannon. So I was able to put out that entire 2d6 amount of shots into the first Caladius tank, pop that turn 1 very quickly. He had it exposed. He thought he had it hidden. His intent wasn't to have it hidden. I think he wanted it just, He thought maybe he was going to go first, things like that. He really didn't have the opportunity to really hide everything. It was a very weird layout for him. So I took the opportunity to blow that up first turn. I know how dangerous those Caladius grav tanks are. Twin Arachnus, heavy blaze cannons, and the twin Lastrum bolt cannons. They're nasty, right? All of the weapons on that thing is pure offense, little to no defense. So you can blow them up very quickly. I want to say they're 13 to 14 wounds, maybe 14 wounds, 5+ invul, 2+ save, hitting on 2s, right? Sustains. So blew it up turn 1 with the Lord of Skulls. No rerolls, of course, because you don't get to do rerolls at the beginning of the game because you don't get to proc Angron's ability until after the first turn because it happens in the charge phase for his rerolls within 6-inch aura. So hit a bunch of shots. I believe I rolled on 2d6 like 9. I was able to hit like 7 of them, wounded 6 of them. 5 of them went through, killed the entire vehicle. So 5 times 3 is 15. So I was able to blow up the vehicle turn 1. The Lord of Skulls wasn't able to do much else afterwards. He did not like that, obviously, and didn't work in his favor. But that's how it ended up going for the Caladius. His turn, he tried to maneuver, and I really plugged my Lord of Skulls out of line of sight of everything that was dangerous to the Lord of Skulls, like the Land Raider with the quad las cannons. Everything was kind of far as well. He was very threatened by my threat range and my speed. So he put everything literally on the back line, if not, as close as possible as he could to the back line. Then on turn 2, he started moving things up. I believe one of his Caladius tanks was able to get a couple of pop shots on my Lord on Juggernaut that I ran out there just to hold some objectives. Ended up bracketing him all the way down to 1 wound. So he ended up surviving. He didn't have anything else within range or line of sight to kill it off. So he survived with 1 wound. He kind of retreated throughout the game and tried to just hold objectives behind ruins and things like that and just survive because he was almost dead. There was no way, obviously, for me to heal him. But that was our turn 1. Turn 2, I invested heavily on some units that he ran out to hold the center objectives because we wanted to stage, both of us, and put ourselves in a position to start scorching a lot of those objective markers. And I wanted to make sure, and I already knew that, right? Like I prepped the night before on both missions for Friday at the Gateway Open, where I knew exactly what I was going to do going in there. So if you're ever going to tournaments, big super majors, team events like this, right, with 128 participants, make sure that you're prepping every single night, breaking down what missions you're going to play into, know exactly how you're going to stage and position your army. I played the way that I talked about on Ops episode 13, where I said I was basically going to have, and I'll reiterate again, most of my army, if not all of my army, within half of the board, no matter if it was a long table edge or the short table edge, right? So I put everything on half of it. That's what I did here as well. Hid everything, of course. Hid the Lord of Skulls. He just came out of the deployment zone, and I positioned him properly, right? Because he was one of the last drops after all of his vehicles. So I can get that pop shot if I had taken turn 1 or even turn 2, he moves out. Right, I had some angles to kind of get those shots on those vehicles because I needed to take them out very quickly. So turn 2, I was able to position towards the center and start getting ready to start scorching some of those objective markers. The biggest thing is that I ran Lord Evocatus where he had the Wardens on the short table edge because he had the Wardens closer to the bottom portion, closer to me. So I had ran Lord Invocatus and some regular spawn. Uh, I apologize, some regular 8-bound into that direction, just in case, right? Like I tell you, I try to, I try to do the trifecta where I'll do spawn, regular 8-bound, and like one of the Lord on Juggernauts, either Lord Invocatus or the Lord and Juggernaut, to one area, right? So they can kind of flank things. Everything else, the bulk of my army, all of the 8-bound, Angron, and Jackals are going to be in the opposite end. So, and just in case I need to, I'll take them fast units with Scout and Lord Invocatus and scout a couple units. But I was able to scout Lord Invocatus, knowing that I was going first into that edge where the Wardens were at. So my primary mission was to take that bottom objective marker and start scorching that first, and then position myself in the other two that were in no man's land, so the center one and the highest one above me. That's exactly what I did. I ran out there with Lord Invocatus next to his Warden. His Wardens are very slow, right? They don't have advance in charge. So I was able to run out there, turn 2, and start the scorching process. I knew that I had to stay there for an entire turn and his turn, right? And survive. Turn 2, I ran out the Lord of Skulls, or I just positioned them to shoot a couple of those Wardens just in case they did get a charge off into Lord Invo, to basically whittle them down so they wouldn't kill him and stop him from scorching. Because one of the best strategies is, if there's an objective marker that they leave alone and they just throw one unit on, right? Especially on Scorched or Terraform or something like that, you want to take that before them. You want to either Scorch that or Terraform that before them. You don't want them to get those empty side hanging out objective markers, right? You want to make sure that you grab it first, you Scorch it first, or you Terraform it first, and you can survive. So that's what I did. So I started Scorching at turn 2. Pop shots with the Lord of Skulls and those Warden. I might have killed maybe 3 or 4 of them with the Lord of Skulls. I did get within 18 inches as well to pop the Skull Hurler. So that was very good, right? The Skull Hurler is strength 14, AP 4, D6 plus 2 damage. Very good against Custodes. He immediately popped his Armor Contempt, I think it was. I know he doesn't get Feel No Pains because that's only for mortal wounds, but he popped something. I don't know. I'm not a specialist for Custodes. I'm a specialist for World Eaters, but I don't know exactly what he did. He tried to prevent me from really killing that unit. It helped out slightly, right? I only ended up killing like 4 of them. He had a character in there, so it ended up killing it down to, I believe, 3 models. So he had the Banner, the Blade Champion, I think it was, and oh no, he had Valaris in it. He had Valaris in the Wardens, and the Banner Champion, and another model. So he had 3 or 4 models left. I killed like 3 or 4. He tried to charge. It was actually, I made sure that I stood back with Lord Invocatus, towing it from the opposite end of him. I didn't invest too much because I didn't want to give him a close charge, right? So I tiptoed into it from the back half, hiding from all of his shooting, and made it a 10-inch charge for him. He ended up trying to roll it, re-roll it, could not make the 10-inch charge. He went through his turn on that, and obviously that was his turn. He tried to make the charge, could not make it, so then his turn completed. I was able to Scorch that objective marker and burned it and took it off the table, which was amazing. So now all I had to deal with were the other 2 objective markers in no man's land. Hold in mind, really not too concerned about his, just really trying to position myself that if I can get into there, because I don't have deep striking units, or at least I didn't put any units in reserve for deep striking in this game. So I was able to position myself where I could get all the other objective markers in no man's land. So once that happened, he had the prosecutor just sitting back holding his objective markers. Turn 2 or 3. Yeah, turn 2, I had already positioned far enough with Exalted 8 bound where on the left flank, so I had moved up turn 1 with Exalted 8 bound from the scout move, moved up again, ran my blessings for advance and charge, ended up charging into the second Caladius, charged that, destroyed it. It was a big charge. It was like a 7-inch charge. Ended up making that. Didn't have to re-roll it. Smacked into the other Caladius. Land Raider was kind of still hanging around. I was positioning my Angron really to charge into the Venerable Dreadnought, and in round 3 is when Angron, 3 Exalted 8 bound, and the Lord of Skull were actually able to charge into him. So I was pretty aggressive with the Lord of Skulls on this board, knowing that I need to position myself. I know he had a lot of good shooting, but I had these 2 angling, I want to say it was layout 6, these 2 ruins that were just hiding me in the center right, so I could just hide my Lord of Skulls behind that. And he kind of kept his Land Raider either centered on it or above it, so he couldn't really get angles on me. And he was too concerned about the Exalted 8 bound because of their speed, so I was able to position that. So I got a charge in round 2 off on the Caladius. The Custodians as well were pretty close to the center. He was trying to hold the objective in the center with the Custodian guards, right? So I was able to throw a fat brick of 6 Exalted into the Custodians, 3 Exalted into the Caladius, and 3 Exalted just mopped up the entire Caladius immediately, right? All of those attacks, 4, 8, and 6. You have 14 attacks Exalted. I had Angron around for rerolls, and I had procted. After I killed the Custodians in the center, I rolled my blessings roll to get me another blessings roll, and I got sustained hits. So I put the sustained hits against the Caladius and blew it up immediately, put a bunch of wounds into it, like 21 wounds. But yeah, that was a very fun game. After that, it kind of whittled down, right? His turn, he dropped in Venatari behind my Exalted 8 bound. I had some regular 8 bound back there as well, doing some actions, just holding the objective marker in no man's land that was closest to his side. And he failed the charge to charge them. I went back, hit them with the regular 8 bound Venatari. He only had 3 in a unit. I only ended up killing 2 for some reason. He just clutched his saves, and he ended up falling back with that unit, recharging them on his turn, and killed like 1 or 2 of my regular 8 bound. And then we just kept on fighting back and forth, and I was finally able to clean them out. Turn 3, like I was telling you, I charged the Land Raider with Angron, Lord of Skulls, and 6 8 bound. I just really wanted to get more movement, right? That's all it was really about. I didn't need to invest in that overkill, but I wanted to position myself to take home objective where all those prosecutors were at. So I put myself in a position to get over there after I blew up the Land Raider with the Lord of Skulls, because I went with him first. I didn't even want to bother doing the whole D6 plus 2 damage with Angron. I just wanted to do the flat damage, flat 8 damage from the Lord of Skulls. It's pretty brutal. So I rolled those, hit. Angron was right there, so I was able to reroll all of my hits and wounded on 3s. I didn't pop the stratagem for +1 to wound. I knew that I had those 3 units invested, so I wasn't going to waste my CP. But destroyed it, blew it up, or destroyed it without exploding it. And basically everything else went downhill there, right? I took the Lord of Skulls, turned around on turn 4. The Wardens were getting ever so closely to Lord Invocatus. He popped them, shot them all, killed them all in shooting, minus the character, which was called, what was his name again? Valerian. So he charged, Lord of Skulls charged Valerian. So really, the Lord of Skulls was the MVP in this game. He killed Valerian. So the Wardens were all dead. Custodian guards were all dead. Turn 2. The Terminators dropped in turn 3. I had the 6-pack of Exalted 8 bound, clean up that entire unit. They cleaned them up immediately. After Angron, Lord of Skulls, and the 6-pack, right, they had invested. He deep striked them on closer to his end. So Angron and the 6-pack all ran over there, fought. Between those two units, they all cleaned up and mopped up those Terminators, while the Lord of Skulls was investing in the Wardens. So he's already down, 3 tanks, 2 Caladius, Land Raider, Warden. At this point in time, he's got 1 Venatari unit left, and his girls in the back holding the objective marker. There was really nothing else for him to do, but it was an excellent game. So I ended up winning that game out 20-0. So he ended up getting 0 points in the team score, which ended up being, I want to say, 100 to 32 points, right? Very fun opponent, excellent individual. I really appreciate TJ. He was amazing throughout the entire game. He never wavered. He never got upset. We talked a lot, and I helped him out as much as I can. So that was that game. All right, so the next one was this was an incredible individual. Thank you so much to Mycroft Holmes. Yes, his name is Mycroft Holmes, and they called him Sherlock. So, if you know, Mycroft Holmes was actually the brother of Sherlock Holmes. If you which is kind of hilarious, but I like that. Awesome guy. Awesome guy with a speed freaks, adrenaline junkies, detachment lists, Orks. Everyone knows that Orks has a very sweet spot in my heart. I love me some Orks. I love playing Orks. I actually won a Best General 2 years ago at ATC with Orks back in the days. So I love me some Orks. This was an amazing list. So when I saw the Cult of Speed list, I was just in awe. I was like, somebody's actually using this. I've been trying to put one together. I have so many painted models from when they were super broken. And what was it, 8th edition, right? Where you had all the buggies and the planes and the Wazdaka Blastas and things like that, right? So I still have a lot of those models already painted when I used to play in a lot of events with those. Never won an event with that particular list. I actually won with a Blood Axis list. But anyways, amazing individual, amazing player too. Very tactical, very intelligent. I just ended up outplaying him on the table. He also was not aware how fast World Eaters were, right? Which everyone should know at this point how fast World Eaters are. He thought that they were a 7-inch base movement. They're actually not. They're 9-inch base movement, as we all know as World Eater players, and can go up to +2 for 11, and then auto advance 6, which is one of the things that I did into one of his Death Copter units. So he knew my threat range, but he didn't know it entirely with that 2 inches, which he ended up really paying for it. Turn 1. He ended up actually going first. This mission was Mission A from the Pariah Nexus Tournament Companion. It was Taken Hold, Raise Banners, and Tipping Point. Taking hold against all of these buggies with all those wounds is nuts. So I was very discouraged going into this match, right? I didn't want this type of list going into that, but I had an amazing captain. Shout out to Thomas Fetterman, an amazing captain. He gave me the best matchups throughout the weekend. He outplayed every single captain that we played against. So shout out to him. Kudos to him. He was very smart, and he knew that taking hold, he was going to predominantly hold a lot of it. And that's actually where I dropped 1 point in the event. The first 2 turns, I was not able to hold any objective markers in No Man's Land. He just threw everything at it, right? So I kind of had to tiptoe and play the late game with him. I did the same thing like I did the other match, right? I put the Lord on Juggernaut to the closer side towards me, because now we're kind of in a hammer and anvil on the short table edge, right? And I put the Lord on Juggernaut, the Spawn, and the regular 8-bound all in that end to take care and harvest any skulls from that side. So I wanted to get that objective marker. I put everything else towards the center of the two no man land objective markers, right? Because I wanted to get the center. This was a wide open layout. This was layout 4, so it was everything was basically in his favor, right? I just had to outplay him, which I ended up doing, right? And outsmarting him throughout all of the rounds. The only reason he got a point was I ended up not holding objectives the first 2 turns, and I didn't raise banners as well, right? So if I would have raised some banners on this one, it would have really helped me out get that additional 5 points. But I still beat him by 50 plus points. It was 94 to, I want to say 41 actually, right? So he threw the Death Killer War Trike on the left side of his short table edge with all of the war bikes, right? So he had a fat unit of 6, I want to say. Let's go ahead and look at that very quickly. Right. So, of course, he has some Gretchen in here, some Megatrack, some knobs. Knobs that can hop out of trucks and charge you after the truck has moved, not advanced, but moved, right? Yep. He had a fat pack of 6, so 5 regular war bikers and a knob in there. So he had the war trike attached to that. He was pretty hesitant actually with that unit. He held it back for at least 2 or 3 turns. I got some pop shots into it. Turn 2 with the Lord of Skulls. Ended up killing like 4 of them. That's when he started moving it. He knew that I was going to start getting angles off of it. Everything else, I really couldn't get angles off. I was in a pretty bad position with the Lord of Skulls. He was keeping everything very hidden, and I didn't want the death copters to come out and blow up my Lord of Skulls, right? So up to this point, Angron and the Lord of Skulls have not taken a wound yet, have not died yet, will not die or take a wound this entire game as well. I was very methodical, very precise with my positioning with those 2 units. I am not super aggressive with Angron. Angron is actually not a support piece for me in the sense that he goes out and supports 8-bound and rolls with them. He's more of a follow-up counterattack piece. You know, Angron just sits there as like, my little pretties, and he looks at his sons and he's like, feast my children, and they just eat everything that's on the board. And if they start getting threatened too much and they need some support, I'll start throwing Angron behind them, and then Angron will just clean up everything else. That's kind of how I play Angron, more of mid-board, not aggressive whatsoever. I go out there with all the Exalted 8-bound, threaten with the 2 Juggernauts, the 2 cavalry units, spawns holding objectives, things like that. So he had a war boss as well attached to a fat unit of 10 knobs. Obviously, they were in the truck. He obviously had the faster than use enhancement, which allows him to move the truck, hop out, and advance in charge, just, you know, Land Raider style. Also, he had 2-3 units of boys, just 30 of them, just to hold objective. They were pretty scary in the sense of having so many more models than me, right? Having 23 models, and already with just 3 units of boys, he outnumbers me in models. That can be pretty scary, especially for Exalted 8-bound. So I try to stay away from them by screening out with my Lord of Skulls and my Juggernauts and things like that. Try to let everything kind of get into my Juggernauts. He did pop the Juggernaut also. The Juggernauts were, you know, kind of the sacrificial lambs in all of my games. I would throw them out there to kind of bait people out, and that's how I use them mostly in all of these games, especially in Game 5 when I went against Drukhari and they have anti-infantry 3 up, right? They're not going to do that to the Juggernauts because they're not infantry. But he used those. He had 4 trucks, right? So he had the 3 boys and 3 of the trucks, and then the knobs, obviously, and the last one. He had some Death Copters that he threw out way too far, trying to get an objective marker closer to him. And I had scouted a fat 6-pack of Exalted 8-bound and another 3-pack right behind it, right? So He ended up getting first turn. I had scouted, hid behind the ruin. He moved up very far. First turn, I threw that entire Exalted 6-pack towards that Deathcopter unit because they are scary. Flat 3 damage. Very, very scary. They'll kill Angron. They'll kill the Lord of Skulls. They'll kill everything, especially within 9 inches. And he took the second 6 of them, right? So he had 12, which is bananas. And if you know, Deathcopters, like I said, are very nasty. He put the other one in reserves, which was very scary. Because if you drop within 9 inches, but you don't get it out of reserve, out of deep strike, but if you're within 9 inches, he has 2 stratagems, one for lethals on 5s and another one for sustained hits 2 on 5s, right? So get really, really brutal. And then you re-roll all wounds for Deathcopter rockets. So gross. Yeah, so I wanted to stay away from all of that stuff. So I knew that if I threw that 6-pack in there and killed that unit, it would eliminate all that, big threat, right? Because that's a big threat, 6 of them. So I got into them, ended up barely scratching out the entire wiping of that unit, so kill all 6 of the Deathcopters. I also put my Exalted 8-bound in a bad position but I had to do it. Those Deathcopters had to go in a bad position for everything else in his army, because now I was around 70% into his table half, right? So everything was close. His knobs were in the truck. They might have been 24 inches away. Vehicle moves 10. He hops out 3 inches, advances and charges. Nothing, right? I think he needed a 6-inch charge, which he ended up doing in turn 3. Right, his turn 3, because this was turn 2 that I was able to invest, or turn 1 I was able to invest. Turn 2 he was kind of positioning, and then turn 3 he went over there and tried to mop him up. I popped it 2 CP for -1 damage in close combat. That really helped me when he hit me with those knobs, 40 attacks plus the war boss. He also didn't know that you can't use the WA ability on the war boss for 9 attacks on the charge coming out of the truck. So that really helped me out too. He was only 5 attacks, damage 1. So the entire unit was only damaged 1. He only had 45 attacks, right? Hitting on 3s. He ended up botching a lot of his attacks. His rolls weren't very great. He might have hit like 2/3 of those hits. And then another third of them were actually wounds. So I think I had to do like 12 saves, 1 damage each, Exalted being 3 wounds each, with a 5-up Feel No Pain that I immediately put on that unit that phase, knowing that I was going to get thrashed, right? Or potentially. He ended up killing, I want to say 4 out of that unit, or 3. No, he killed 3, because I still had 3 left, right? After the knobs hit it. So I retaliated. At that point in time, already has been there. I was there already with Angron to support him, going on my bottom of 3 turn. So they hit back. Angron comes in, sweeps them up. We only end up killing like 7 of them. So we end up fighting for 2 rounds into round 4. Top of round 4 in his turn. I obviously fight before him, so I end up killing the war boss with Angron, and the Exalted kill all of the remaining knobs. He obviously had Gretchen just getting him CP, so this dude had a ton of CP throughout the entire game. He tried to throw one in the center to try to bait me out. I didn't take the bait, right? He was just sitting behind the wall, seeing if he can try to get that a center objective. I had a unit of 3 Exalted over there. So I just sat on the objective, just waiting for those Gretchen to come out, and he knew he had no chance against those Exalted. The Megatrack Scrap Jets really had no angles. The Angron and the Lord of Skulls ended up picking up both of these. So at this point in time, the knobs are dead. The Rocket Truck Squig Buggy, he actually put down where the Lord of Invacatus, the scouting regular 8-bound, and the spawn were at. He kept on just flicking wounds at the jackals, right? I thought that was pretty weird. He can see the jackals from the bottom portion. There was on my home objective. So this was a hard-fought game. We kept on going back and forth. There was a lot of mistakes that I think I made in combat where I was leaving trucks alive and just trying to deal with his boys. So ended up turn 4. He ended up holding a couple more objectives. I didn't actually get to hold a lot of them. But at this point in time, I had very good secondaries. I was clutching all of my secondaries because I was killing all his guys and I was all over the board. I was engaging on all fronts. I was able to do a lot of things. Jackals and Spawn were able to do a lot of actions as well. So I had the opportunity to get all my secondaries, even though I wasn't getting my primaries. Thank goodness to the Blood God for blessing me with good secondaries, even though I wasn't able to get a lot of points in primaries. So turn 3, 4, and 5 is when I really started picking up because he pretty much had only trucks left. Turn 1, I already had destroyed the shock jump dragsters, both of them, because he teleported them to hold an objective close to me. I don't know why he did that. He tried to plink off Lord Invocatus, and he had the distance, right? Ended up doing 0 wounds, ended up failing on his hit towards Lord Invocatus, and one wound on Lord Invocatus, and Lord Invocatus just rolled a 4 up for his 4 up invulnerable save. So 3 8 bound end up eating that dragster. The other dragster he ended up throwing in the center. I ended up killing that with the 3 remaining from after fighting the Death Copters and the Knobs, and just cleaned those up. And then he basically at this point had the War Bikers and the War Trike that was in the bottom half, which it really looked like he was trying to invest a lot into my deployment zone objective marker. And I noticed that not immediately. I don't know why I didn't notice it immediately. But he was a very smart guy, very cerebral individual. But I noticed that after the first turn, he started positioning all of his trucks and all of his bikes towards my objective marker. He had a unit of boys as well. They were still in the truck. I popped the truck with the Lord of Skulls. I was 6 inches away, so I ended up charging the unit, swept the unit with the Lord of Skulls with his sweep profile, cleaned them up. Still had around 3 trucks and some war bikes. Turn 5, I ended up shooting all of the war bikes, killing them all, including the War Trike, and charged them with the 1 wound Lord Invocatus and killed them off. And then 3 trucks, he tried to position it where he can charge and shoot all of the jackals. I think he was trying, I'll be honest with you, I think at this point in time, which I don't know why, I think he would have been up in primary, so he couldn't have done it. But I think he was trying to do a secret mission, right? That's the only thing that I can think of, right, for taking hold, because taking hold is just a maximum of 15. You don't get anything special for holding the back objective marker. I don't know. Maybe he was just getting greedy. I don't know exactly what was happening, but it was a very smart guy. Shout out to Mycroft Holmes. Got a wonderful list. So I ended up winning this one as well, 19-1. I dropped 1 point. I ended up only getting 50 points because I wasn't able to raise banners and get all the primary points. I only got 40 primary, starting from 30 from turn 3 to turn 5. So, and around turn 4, I already had table. So, yep, that was that game. All right, so my next opponent was Muggsy. Muggsy was a very good player. This was the most scariest one for me, looking at it before I started the game, just looking at it on paper. Actually, my next round was actually the most scariest on the tabletop, but this one was scary just looking at it on paper, right? Because it's blood for blood. We want blood for the blood god. They want blood to drink. So I ran into the amazing S top A tier Blood Angels in a lot of good hands, right? So very good player. We ended up doing Terraform, Swift Action, and Sweeping Engagement. I wasn't able to take advantage of Swift Action on this match actually. Um, I don't think I was, because Swift Action Allows a unit to advance and fall back and eligible, right? Battle line units. So actually, I did one time with the Jackals. I was able to advance and try to terraform a objective marker, and it actually worked out for me. So I did use it one time with my Jackals. There were 3 objectives in no man's land. I ended up going to the right most closest to him, left furthest from me to terraform that one. Ended up succeeding with that in around round 2. So he had 2 chaplains. Chaplains are just gross, right? He had both chaplains in his death company units. He had chaplain or one chaplain with jump back in the jump pack death company, another chaplain in the foot one. He had Gabriel Seth. So Gabriel Seth is actually one of my favorite characters in the lore, right? I love me some Flesh Terrors. I wouldn't play Blood Angels ever, but I would play Flesh Terrors if they were really good, right? Hopefully that new codex that's dropping in a couple weeks is amazing, or actually this Saturday. So hopefully the Flesh Terrors in there are amazing. I might actually do a Flesh Terror army. We'll see. But anyways, and then of course he had the Sanguinary Priest. He had 1 unit of Assault Intercessors, no jump pack, 2 units of just regular intercessors that were sitting back holding his objective marker and trying to get other objective markers. He had assault intercessors with jump pack, 1, 2 of them. Death Company Marines, 2 units. So he had put the 2 chaplains in those, right? And they're both 10 gross with the chaplain, right? They give you that +1 to wound. Death Company Marines with jump pack. So he put the jump chaplain, go figure, into that. So he had 3 chaplains, 3 Death Company. They were amazing, absolutely amazing, brutal. I had to sacrifice all of my 8 bound. Once again, 3rd game, Lord of Skulls and Angron never got any wounds taken away from them. They just mopped up everything. I positioned myself very methodically, as I always do with those 2 units, because I know that once those 2 units go down, your army is going to easily clean up all of those Exalted 8 bound and infantry models very easily. So I always wanted to keep those in the back to make sure that I had the late game win whenever I needed to. And Angron can just go clean up whatever the Exalted 8 bounds and 8 bounds couldn't do, right? And then he also had 2 Librarian Dreads. So in this game, I actually got first turn, which was beneficial, super ultra beneficial for me, right? First turn, I was able to scout. I was on the deployment line. I was like, you know what? I'm going to gamble this game. I'm going to put everything on the line, get it out there just in case I get that first turn, because he's going to catch me anyways, right? He's fast. He's got jump pack, and he's going to have to position himself. He's not as fast as me, so I can advance and charge, run through ruins and things like that. I know he can do that too, but he can't advance and charge. I think he can maybe 1 unit, but he never did throughout the game. But anyways, I ended up hitting 1 fat unit of 10 Death Company with a chaplain in it, turn 1 with a 6-pack of Exalted 8 bound. I did an auto advance of 6 inches on that unit because I wanted to make sure that that unit was dead. I also had some 3 regular 8 bound that followed up. He had some, I believe it was assault intercessors. Yeah, he had some assault intercessors that were right next to them. So he had put him behind a ruin. He did not position where he intended to be more than 1 inch out. So I ended up going into that ruin and destroying that unit as well with the 3. And I had scouted another unit of 3 Exalted towards the center, and there was a ruin that was facing towards me that was closer to the center of the board that he had everything in. He had Death Company, he had a librarian, both of his librarians, one in the deployment zone, one next to that unit of Death Company Marines without jump pack. Death Company Marines with jump pack, he left all the way in the back, right? They were basically on his table edge. I don't know why he did that. He should have put that unit there. Maybe he knew my threat range and he didn't want that unit to die. It was actually kind of smart for him, right? But I ended up charging into the unit of assault intercessors and the Death Company unit that was in there. Did not clean them up. Actually, we ended up fighting in that ruin for about 3 battle rounds, right? And but 3 battle rounds. Once I cleaned up the Death Company Marines without jump pack, chaplain, and assault intercessors, I was able to position those 3 regular 8-bound and exalted 6-pack of 8-bound towards that flank. And I was positioning myself where I was far enough. So he ended up supporting his unit and fighting the 3, or I had 2 units actually. So it was 2, yeah, 1, 2, 3. I had 2 units of exalted that actually went into that ruin. So I had 6 of them. And they weren't able to kill them all. That unit is hard as nails to kill. They have the sanguinary guard in there, right? 5 up, feel no pain, 2 wounds. He was able to armor of contempt, right? A little bit of a challenge on me. I didn't have Angron to support me with rerolls a hit, so I didn't roll too well. Only ended up killing like 5 of them turn 1. And he had Gabriel Seth in there. That was brutal. I did put Feel No Pain on once I ended up killing that unit in the top left. That was the Death Company Intercessors. So I put Feel No Pain after I had the Advance in Charge and +2 movement. Put Feel No Pain, rolled the Feel No Pain Blessing to help them out. It ended up helping them out turn 1, bottom of turn 1, his bottom of turn 1, right? To help my Exalted 8-bound really survive in there. So, like I was saying, we ended up fighting for 3 turns. My 6-pack, he ended up supporting his units with both Death Company on foot and jump pack. And no, just Death Company on foot. The Death Company and jump pack, I don't know why he didn't try to charge my Exalted. They were coming from his right. They weren't too far from him. He was trying to go to the center. And in the center, I had left Lord Invocatus in there trying to terraform the center. Because at this point in time, like I keep on telling you, right, how I stage my stuff out, I had the spawn and Lord on Juggernaut on my right, his left side that he left open, terraforming that. So I'll terraform that early. The other ones I'll kind of just stage and position myself to kind of bait him out to see if he's going to come out there. Then I can have multiple units. So I try to get multiple units out there to try to bait him out. And then if he tries to terraform, I just, nom everything in the center. And then I'll terraform because he doesn't have basically anything left. So I ended up terraforming turn 1, the one on the right-hand side. He tried to get units over there. He tried to get assault intercessors over there. He ended up failing his charge. I ended up terraforming by the end of his turn or turn 1. Ended up getting that point for that. So that was gone. After that, he left it alone. He didn't want to bother it no more. I ended up charging him on turn 2. Killed the 5 intercessors, assault intercessors he had with my Lord on Juggernaut. Killed those. Spawn just sat there looking pretty with the 4 of Feel No Pain. And the Death Company, going back to the Death Company where he was jumping in the center to kind of take that center away from me because he knew he was losing ground at this portion, right? So he tried to take the center away from me. It didn't work out for him. It worked out for me because I baited him in with the Lord on Juggernaut, or Lord Invocatus, right, rather. So I had Lord Invocatus on there trying to terraform that center objective, right? And I haven't done, and I positioned myself with the Jackals, but I didn't actually start doing that until turn 3 because I was waiting and screening out my deployment zone for another unit of assault intercessors that he had in reserves, and I knew they were going to come out of Deep Strike pretty soon. So screening them out, his Death Company ends up charging into my Lord on Lord of Invocatus. Lord of Skull ends up coming out on turn 3, who was right behind the ruin, right? Ends up shooting half of them. He has a chaplain in there as well. Shooting and killing 9 of them, right? So more than half of them. Killing 9 of them just in shooting, right? Because the Angron was right there, so he gave him the rerolls. I was procting that every single turn. Rerolls. So this is around turn 3. So I rerolled to shoot with the Lord on Skulls. Ended up charging the unit as well. He only had the chaplain and one dude left. I just did the strike just to get it over with. I ended up charging Angron as well just to get that extra movement so he can get into the center. At this point in time, we still have the battle that's going on over there in the ruin, which is very close to the Lord of Skulls and Angron. It's about 12 to 14 inches away, so not too far for Angron. So we position ourselves in the center. Lord and Juggernaut is dead at this point. Obviously, he got smacked by a chaplain and freaking 10 Death Company jump packs. Right, so he's dead. So I end up leaving the Lord of Skulls on there to do the terraform, and I throw Angron out there into that unit where Gabriel Seth was at, and he had the Libby Dreads, 2 Libby Dreads. So, and I had the fat pack of 6 Exalted 8-bound starting to basically close in right into that ruin itself. We ended up mopping everything out by turn 4. I ended up tabling him turn 4, right? He only had assault intercessors on his deployment zone. I already had killed one of the librarians in turn 3. Turn 4, that 6-pack smacked into the other Libby Dread and finished off a unit of 10 Death Company that he had with a chaplain. Because my 6 Exalted, there were just 3 and 3s. They just wouldn't die. They would not die for anything. They were clutching their saves, their 5-up, feel no pains. Gabriel Seth couldn't kill them all quick enough, right? Even with all of his sustains and things like that. So he ended up having to run out with some Death Company Marines, trying to clean them up, and he ended up eventually cleaning those up. He had, so I had to kind of break down 6 of those into 3 of them into the Dread and the other 3 into the 10 Death Company with Chaplain. Killed the Libby Dread. He turned around, armor contempted the Death Company Marines. I only killed maybe 4 of them. They turn around, end up killing 4 of 5 of my Exalted 8-bound, really cleaning them up, right? So at this point in time, I'm really losing a lot of Exalted 8-bound. Angron comes in. He ends up cleaning everything out with his strikes for the Death Company Marines, and then flies into the other Libby Dreadnought and destroys him. So at this point in time, turn 4, I've already terraformed turn 1, the first one closest to me in the bottom, No Man's Land. The center was done by the Lord of Skulls. He helped out a little bit, putting some shots into the Libby Dread, into some units that were just open that had killed the 3 and 3 Exalted, right? So whittled that unit down to just Gabriel Seth. Then I had the scouting regular 8-bound, just clean up Gabriel Seth. And then the Jackals were terraforming the last one. So I'm getting all of these extra points now, right? And I'm holding every single objective as well, the entire game. So this game I ended up going 20-0. I tabled the great opponent named Bugsy by turn 4. He tried to deep strike his assault intercessors to charge into my Jackals and stop them from terraforming. He failed that. I think he did re-roll. He failed that as well. And basically that was it. Game was over. I ran over there with Angron, and Angron easily picked up 5 assault intercessors with jump back. So, and that was game. So this was my favorite opponent was Chris Hardy. This individual was hilarious, right? I had a great time with the 3 previous opponents. So this is day 2, right? Going into my 4th round. So I'm already 3-0 at this point. I am at 59 points and 1 point dropped. So I'm really at this point like super motivated to continue to win, continue to do great. This individual was hilarious. I love Chris. I really hope I get to see Chris. I hope Chris becomes a very good friend of mine in the future. Hopefully, I see him next year. I think I grabbed his number and I was helping him out with a couple of tools and things that I had on the tabletop that he really liked. I usually give out these deployment sticks, right? Uh, for your basically to put your deployment lines on, right? Your deployment zones on. So he really liked those. He was asking me about that. I told him to go on Etsy. I had ordered them from a company that I usually give out at my events. It says Grand Onslaught 6 on it. But anyways, amazing opponent, amazing individual. Chris, big shout out to Chris. Much love to him and his team. This crazy man had the Fat Secrets with Chaos Demons, right? This was an absolutely brutal, brutal list. He had 3 great unclean ones, with one of them having the Endless Gift enhancement, which, for all of you who know, right, the great unclean one with the enhancement just means a 4 feel no pain. Brutal. I ended up running 9 Exalted 8 bound into that thing and still couldn't kill it. No support for Mangron, but I did have sustained hits. Most of my games, I had sustained hits on my stuff, unless I was trying to advance and charge. I usually don't try to use advance and charge too much. I might use it maybe once or twice maximum per game, right? If that, but usually maybe once. I know in this game, I ended up using it because I went first again. This was very brutal for him because I ended up smacking into this great unclean one with the Endless Gift, left it on 2 wounds. Yes, 2 wounds, right? Insult to my combat, right? So I was very sad, very, very sad that I wasn't able to clean it. The other 2 great unclean ones, he put in reserves. So I was just panicking. I was just super worried at this point. Like, where is he going to drop these fatties on the table? He had all 3 Keepers of Secrets on the table. He actually had them to the right on this table, which was Linchpin, Raised Banners, and Search and Destroy. He had them to the right of them. I ended up tagging 2 of them. Turn 1 with everything but 1 unit that failed a charge, which was one of the Exalted. But the regular 8-bound, Angron, Lord on Juggernaut, even my spawn got into his Hellhounds because I had to charge. I had to hit everything. His Hellhounds was actually screening a Keeper of Secrets, so I couldn't get to her, and she's right next to the Great Unclean one that I couldn't kill. And then he had Nurglings that were 6 inches away from my Exalted, so made them -1 to hit, which made it harder for me. And that's the reason why I wasn't able to kill that Great Unclean one with that 4-up Feel No Pain, because I was hitting on 4s, obviously, instead of 3s with my Chain Fist. But I had Sustain, so that helped out a little bit. And he also had something else in the back. Oh, he had the Mask. He had the Mask back there, right? Fights first, but she was just holding the objective. And he had 10 Demonettes also. 10 Demonettes, I left them alone. I smacked into the Keeper of Secrets, Angron, and the Exalted 8-bound of 6, Lord Invul, and the spawn and the other one ended up killing both Seekers. Turn 1, right off the gate, right? So he's already down 2 demons. He had 6 of them, just so you're aware, right? So let's count it up. 3 great unclean ones, 3 Keepers of Secrets, and then the Mask for her fight on first. She can also select a unit to make -1 and then select one of her units to make it +1 to wound. So -1 to wound and then +1 to wound. Gross, right? Very, very strong. And then she gets fight first for herself. So I end up killing the Flesh Hounds, one of the Flesh Hound units, turn 1. Another Flesh Hound unit he actually kept in reserves to try to get some points for later on. The 2 Nurglings, he had put a Nurgling unit far to the right just to get a quadrant because you're 0 OC, you can't even hold objectives. He put them on the objectives. I ended up yeeting out my Lord on Juggernaut. He cleaned up all of the Nurglings over there. and I ended up getting a bunch of points for that, right? So, and I just stood on there basically all game long just to hold that objective because there was a no man's land with the Lord on Juggernaut, and nobody bothered him whatsoever. The fight was obviously on the other side of the board, so that ended up going in my favor. So, King killed 2 Keepers of Secrets turn 1. His bottom of 1, he ends up pulling out all of the Demonettes to charge my Exalted. They really bounced. I think he might have done 2 wounds. Didn't kill any of my Exalted. I had pulled back Angron towards an objective. And he was pretty much safe from everything. I was just trying to stay away from any deep strike threat ranges because I know that in shadows, well, actually, he's got a stratagem that he can deep strike within 3 inches but can't charge. But within shadows, he can drop within 6 inches and bring another one with him, right? So 2 great unclean ones drop and run in front of Angron would have been bad news bears. And I'll tell you exactly what happened later on, too, which was very hilarious. But bottom of 1, he ended up taking the Keeper of Secrets. I want to say the Keeper of Secrets ended up killing a 3-man unit. Yeah, it was a 3-man unit of Exalted 8-bound. Completely clean house with them, with her, right? Shot them, charged them, killed them all. And also killed, actually killed my Lord of Makadas in shooting with her shooting and the Demoness charging into the Lord of Makadas. So killed Lord of Makadas from that. He was trying to hold the objective marker, take it away from them, their deployment zone objective marker, because I was there quick, turn 1, right? So the Demonettes end up killing Lord Invocatus. I end up leaving, after I killed the first unit, the bottom right unit that was just trying to inch its way into my objective marker closer to me on my right side quadrant, his front side quadrant, right? He was just trying to inch over there, try to hold that objective marker. Once again, I don't know why, but he was just trying to get over there. And then he threw the Flesh Hounds over there too to hold the objective marker. So at this point in time, I finally kill the Great Unclean One in the bottom of 1. Even though he had healed +3, he was back up to 5 wounds. Finally killed him. After he hit me. He doesn't do a lot in close combat. He's only like 5 attack, strength 8, -2 or 3, D6 damage. So he only ended up wounding maybe 3 times. I ended up getting like 2 5+ invols. He rolled a 2 for damage. I rolled a 5 for feel no pain, and ended up the unit ended up fine. They didn't kill him. Then they strike back and just kill him. Then turn 2 drops. Keeper of Secrets are there. I still have my 6 Exalted 8-bound. I start getting even closer to her. Angron's kind of hanging back in the back 40 with some regular 8-bound behind them, making sure that I'm screening out for these 2 great unclean ones that are ready to drop at any moment in time, right? So Angron could not get over there into the fight for the Keeper of Secrets, but the 6-pack of Exalted, another unit of Exalted 3, was able to fight her and kill her all in 1 turn, with Angron being 6 inches away, even with his movement. I did not advance in charge because I wanted to get Feel No Pain and sustain hits to make sure I can kill her, right? And then survive everything that they can do to me. So Angron didn't make a charge. He actually ended up failing his charge, but he was 6 inches away from the 6-pack and the 3-pack, so they had 4 rerolls. Ended up killing the Keeper of Secrets in that battle round 2. The regular 8-bound were able to kill the Demonettes, and my spawn, after they killed the Flesh Hounds, ended up charging the Mask to try to fight her. She fought first, ended up smacking me in return, did 3 wounds to one of my spawn, right? Didn't kill any of them. Beginning my command phase, I end up rolling the D3, roll a 5, and end up bringing him back to full health. So that was fun. This point in time, his turn 2, he drops both Great Unclean Ones. Very bad news. He ends up dropping them in shadows within 6 inches of each other. Ends up charging my unit of 3 Exalted, and the other one charged my unit of 6 Exalted. He ended up killing 3 of the Exalted from the 6-pack, 2 from the other unit, right? Spawn is still trying to deal with the mask. And after the mask combat, I ended up killing the mask with the Spawn. But the Great Unclean Ones were doing a lot of damage at this point. The one with the enhancements already gone. Both 3 Keepers of Secrets are already gone. Now I got 2 humongous threats, toughness 12, 5 or 6 up, feel no pain still, right? Still a big threat, tons of wounds. Rolled in, so this was the best part, right? It was the most funniest part. Rolled in with Angron, right? Rolled in with the 3 remaining from the unit of 6, the 2 remaining from the Assaulted 8-bound from the unit of 3 into the other Great Unclean One. And Lord of Skulls smacked it to him as well. End up killing him, the Great Unclean One, from full health between shooting and close combat from all 3 of those units. But Lord Angron said to himself, hey, I'm going to take this gamble and fight this Great Unclean One by myself. Ended up running into the Great Unclean One. Did 14 wounds, so left it on 6 wounds. Great Unclean One turns around and completely just bitch slaps Angron, right? Hits 5 times, wounds 5 times. I fail all of my armor saves. He ends up doing he does D6 damage, so ends up doing 22 wounds, I want to say. It was either 22 or 24. I had a 6 up feel no pain, like I was saying to you, right? I was always running with sustained and feel no pains. End up taking all of them but 2. So Angron immediately just got toasted. First time, so this is actually the first time that either the Lord of Skulls or Angron, not even a Blood Angels game, not in the Custodes game, and not in the Orks game, have Angron and Lord of Skulls even been scathed or touched. At this point in time, Lord of Skull has not been touched, but Angron just got bitch slapped, right? Completely dead. Failed all his saves. I guess he wanted to watch TV or something like that. I don't know, man. He was getting pissed. He had to go to the bathroom. Something happened. But I completely botched all 4 of my 4 up invulnerable saves. Only made 1 or 2 6 up feel no pains. He dies. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Angron's dead. Still have a Great Unclean One. Don't have a lot of Exalted at this point in time. Basically tabled him. He has only the Keeper of Secrets. The mask is gone at this time. Demonettes are gone. He has 1 unit of Nurglings just running around. And Hellhounds sticky to unit. Somehow he's sticky to unit. And they're sitting at the bottom objective. So go to charge next turn, around turn 3. And turn 3, I go to charge the Great Unclean One with the Lord of Skulls. Had to, right? Lord of Skulls and the 5 Exalted, 3 and 2 that I have remaining. The 2 Exalted units could not kill the Great Unclean One. Left them on 5 wounds out of the 6 that he had remaining. So left them on 1. Lord of Skulls came in there, was like, hey, you killed Daddy. Just smacked them with the big cleaver. Ended up doing a multitude of damage. Killed him. At this point in time, we're having so much fun. Me and Chris are just laughing back and forth. We're having a great time. I'm just dying laughing because he, of all things, throughout the entire event, it was the Great Unclean One that killed Angron. And we just thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, we had a great game. I ended up tabling him bottom of turn 3, start of turn 4, killed out the Nurglings, killed out the Hellhounds as well. So everything is basically gone on the tabletop at this point in time. I told him it really didn't matter at this point. Game was over. We started talking it out, and there was a turn 5 left. And I said, hey, you don't mind if I just roll to see if I get Angron back? End up rolling 6 sixes. And Croc was pissed. He ends up coming back turn 5. But I didn't actually pull him back and put him on the table. Game was over at this point in time. Opponent was already tabled. But awesome opponent. Thank you so much to Chris. But that's how the game broke down. And then on to the last match. I'm already 4-0 at this point. Had 4 wonderful opponents. This one proved to be another amazing opponent as well. Wonderful individual. He is also a veteran like myself, ex-military. He was a combat medic. Awesome individual named Ted. He had a very scary list, a list that actually I would like to play in the future. But this was so he brought Sky Splinter Assault Drukhari, bunch of Archons, of course, right? He had 2 Archons, the Beastmaster, also Drazar and Lilith. If anybody knows that Drazar is absolutely a beast. Lilith is even more of a beast. She goes into a unit of witches, and Drazar goes with a unit of incubi, and they will smack anything up, especially 8-bound, right? Because they're anti-infantry 3-up. I knew that going into the match, right? So this one was probably my most intelligent game, and probably my opponent's most misplayed game. Wonderful individual. He was way too conservative, where he held everything in the back 40 and kept everything very far. He had the Lilith and Witches and a Raider, and Incubi and Drazar in a boat, but he put everything. And at this point in time, this is supply drop, smoke and mirrors, and hammer and anvil. So he put everything on the line on the short table edge, hit everything. He knew my threat range. He knew how fast World Eaters could be. He just didn't know that I'm not that type of World Eaters player that's just going to go ooga booga and try to run out there, mindlessly, like some mindless zombies. I am not that player. I am very tactical. I try to position myself and play the mid game, right? And then I will position myself to have a very good threat range. So knowing that he had anti-infantry everything, he had a bunch of Dark Lances with a bunch of Kabalite Warriors. So he had 1, 2, 3 Kabalite Warriors, Witches for the Lilith unit, 1 Raider, which they went in, 1 Venom for the Incubi and Drazar, a bunch of other Venoms. And as you know, if you're dealing with Venoms, right, and let me help you out here with a little tip. If you're playing with World Eaters going into Drukhari, kill their vehicles. It kills their mobility, right? As soon as you kill all of those vehicles, they're done. That's why it's very good if you have an all-comers list. Try to get some shooting in your World Eaters army. Try to, right? Even if you got to take a Forge Fiend, maybe 2 Forge Fiends. The Lord of Skull worked clutch for me because I was destroying all those vehicles. He ended up actually destroying the Raider turn 1. I got a great position, great line of sight because he kept it in the back 40 and his back 6, where I could move out at an angle and see it with my axe and that 60-inch range Demon Gore cannon, right? Took care of it. 2d6 shots, ended up rolling box cards. Wounded it. I don't know how many times, but I ended up doing like 16 wounds to it. Wounded it a bunch of times. Venoms were all behind the terrain. This was layout 7, so everything was hitting. So I was just staging myself. I didn't throw any infantry out on the center of the board except for 1 unit trying to bait him. It didn't actually work. He got a little bit closer to them. Kind of misplayed how to really deal with 8-bound, things like that. But I threw out both of my cavalry units, because he doesn't get any anti-cavalry, right? Held them on objectives, had a spawn unit holding objectives because they're beasts, so he doesn't get any benefits for that, right? So put out 2 of my cavalry units against his army, just trying to bait him to come in a little bit closer to all of my 8-bound. He ended up piecemealing everything out to me. So he would throw the Beastmasters at me with the Cabalite unit jumping out of the Venom and maybe another one. I would go over there, smack him with the Lord on Juggernaut, run back to the objective marker, smack him with a unit of Spawn, smack him with Lord Invocatus, run back to the objective marker. The Beastmasters he threw in the center. I had the Lord of Skulls just sitting there behind a ruin. I ended up just shooting them, whittling them down to 3 models. Lord Invocatus was on that objective marker or close to the objective marker, so I ended up running in and just cleaning up house with them. He also had a Kronos, 2 units of Incubi, Mandrakes, which I killed immediately because he put Mandrakes on my objective markers or no man's land objective markers, trying to screen out everything that was behind it, like my spawn, my 8-bound, and things like that. Big mistake. He thought that he was going to bait me out with 8-bound. I ended up running out there with the Lord Invocatus and Lord on Juggernaut and just killing the Mandrakes with them, right? And just kept all of my other stuff behind. The Scourges, he would just pop out, shoot, and fade throughout the game. He tried to whittle down Lord Invocatus. They were clutching a lot of their armor saves, their vulnerable saves, things like that. So I had actually the Lord on Juggernaut survived the entire game on 1 wound. Yeah, on 1 wound. After the first or second battle round, he took it all the way down to 1 wound, charged multiple units. So if I was to say I had an MVP in this list for game 5, he was definitely my MVP. He killed a bunch of units. He held a bunch of objective markers. He ate a bunch of shots, and he just clutched them all. And 3 units of Scourges, which I ran into. Remember, I was telling you I had a unit that was behind a wall, so I kind of did what he did to the Omega. So I knew, so a supply drop, this is Alpha and Omega, so I knew that I needed to stage myself towards Omega, and I started to do that. Everything else was staged towards Alpha, which was the Spawn and regular 8-bound and the Lord on Juggernaut. So they were just playing tic-tac-toe and basically jumping back and forth, or the Lord of Juggernaut was playing back and forth on the Alpha objective and just taking that and plinking all of those wounds that were coming into him. So I was able to help hold that, get those points because it was 5 points every single objective marker, right? So I was just stacking up primaries. I was taking everything. He scored 0 primaries in this game. I positioned myself where he tried to run out there and hold it. I would go out there with something, either shoot it or kill it with a unit of Juggernauts or Spawn. And that was a very good game, exciting game with Ted. He just kept on throwing things at me in the middle of the board, trying to hold objectives and get those primaries. Around turn 3, I saw that he was whittling down. He didn't have much left. That's when I started breaking out all of my exalted inbound, 8-bound. Started putting them on the center of the board. He had still 3 units of Scourges that were still running around, putting pop shots into everything. This was actually the first time that the Lord of Skulls was wounded in game 5. But he only took 3 through the entire game, and he was hit by a Dark Lance. Angron didn't take anything. He was just running out, kind of cleaning up things that were in the corners. He was screening out for Angron, thinking I was going to charge for Angron. I'm not going to do that. You're not going to bait me in with Angron. Angron is not going to position himself out there to go fight all of your stuff, right? I threw all of my Exalted 8-bound out there while Daddy was sitting back watching the adventure, right, and watching his little boys fight. So I ended up charging into 2 units of Scourges, turn 3. Already killed the Mandrakes at this point in time with both of the cavalry units. One of the units of Incubi was still in the back 40. 2 of them, actually, because he didn't pull those out until about turn 4. And then I charged into Kronos as well. So there was a line that he screened out with Cavalry Warriors, Kronos, and 2 units of Scourges. One unit of Scourges, I hit him with 3 Exalted 8-bound, the one that was hiding behind the wall. I had a 6-pack of Exalted 8-bound that hit the Chronos, the Cabalite Warriors, and the other Scourge unit. I put all of my attacks. I split actually half of my attacks, 3 into the Chronos, 3 into the Scourges, because those are real threats, and I just wanted to be in combat with the Cabalite Warriors so they couldn't fall back because of my aura ability. So if they had to fall back, they had to do a leadership test. So ended up wiping out both of those units, killed the other Scourge unit with the other Exalted 8-bound. Lilith and her crew of flunkies is currently walking on the tabletop. I had through at this point, since Lord Invocatus was just taking care of everything in the center, I threw him to his deployment zone. I said, let me bait him in and kind of keep him away from all of my Exalted in the center and stuff like that, which was a very intelligent move, right? I threw him out there by himself. He's super resilient. He went out there. He took Scourges to the face. He took Incubi to the face, and he took a Venom to the face. Drazar to the face. Yeah. He took all of that. Survived it all. Turned around, killed all the Incubi. Could not kill Drazar. Left the Venom alone. On his fight phase, he tried to kill him again. Whittled him down to 3 wounds. I turned around, killed all of the Scourges. Right, left Drazar alone because I knew my 8-bound was already coming up to clean up. If Lord Invol dies, that's fine, but I wanted to get rid of those shooting threats. And Drazar by himself is not a super threat, even though he's super dangerous, but it's not a super threat. Lilith and her girls are coming in. Charges on his bottom of 4 because he really kept all of his units out till around turn 4. He was too cautious. I told him that after the end of the game. It's like, you're too cautious and you really just piecemealed everything at me. Try to come more in a formation where, and this is what I told him, right? Try to put Cabalite Warriors in the front. Try to put Venoms behind the Cabalite Warriors and all of your Scourges behind all of that. And just pop out, fly over all of them, shoot, and then scoot. Go back, right? So all your Scourges are safe. If I smack into your Cabalite Warriors, now you can hop out with all of your cream fillings, which was all the Incubi, all of the Lilith and witches and stuff like that, and you could just really smack me up with all of your anti-infantry 3-up. So hopefully, he takes that advice and does that a little bit better next time. But piecemealing things out to a player who understands how to play world eaters at a high level, you have to understand that I'm just going to chew everything up very quickly. Lord of Skulls just sat around and just picking things off, right? Just picking Venoms off, killing units with the Demon Gore Cannon and the Skull Hurler wherever he could. So at this point in time, these girls run into Lord Invocatus. Lord Invocatus ends up dying. I have my 6-pack of Exalted unit end up on... he went first. So I was bottom 2, which was great. You want bottom 2 on supply drop, right? Alpha and Omega. So I ended up charging into his units of girls. They disappeared. And at that point in time, Drazar was still on the board. He might have had a unit of Cabalite Warriors, some Venoms, stuff like that. But he had no primary, right? So this was a complete shutout. I want to say he only got 20 points this entire game, so it was 120. He got 10 points entirely, 10 being from the paints. Got no secondaries. He pulled 4 secondaries, tried to get CP from the secondaries, just really couldn't get anything for secondaries. So I ended up helping him out. There were some secondaries that allowed him to pull turn 4 and turn 5. I told him to continue on. If I didn't mess with those units, I'd help him out, try to get a little bit of points, stuff like that. I was already maxed out on everything, and I was holding Omega. Turn 4, I was holding the center and Omega, so I ended up getting 16 points for those two. End of the game, I ended up getting 15 points for the Omega, so I was already past my primary at that point. So I just helped the guy out. We ended up talking it out, and it was a fantastic game. Yeah, very scary army on paper, very fun opponent, but at this point in time, I end up going 5-0. So I am very happy. So yeah, that was a recap of my thrilling adventure at the Gateway Open, where I got Best General first place, above a lot of amazing players out there. Jack actually ended up joking with me how he wanted to dethrone me and kind of try to collude people to do so in a joking way, obviously, right? But none of that actually happened. I know 1,000 players wanted to play into me and see what he can do against me. He tried to call me out, and I said, not today, not today. But it was absolutely fun. Thank you so much to all of my opponents. They were absolutely amazing. Wonderful location, wonderful event. I'll make sure to be back next year. I don't know what army I'm going to go back with next year. Might be World Eaters if we have a book. It might be Harlequins. It might be Orks. I have no clue yet, but I know I had an amazing time, and I know that I will be back. I'm super excited for winning my second best general event in 2 years. It's been a challenge. It's a lot of stress and a lot of pressure on an individual to go through things like this. You really have to prepare a lot. You really need to know your army very well, and you need to know how to use your army effectively, right? You need to be able to stage properly, know when to execute your combats, know when to apply pressure and have restraint, right? And that's the biggest thing with World Eaters. People look at World Eaters and they just look at the speed when you're a player of it, and they're like, oh, I just want to go out there and charge everything. No, you have to be super intelligent, right? And understand that you need to play smart. Your stuff can die very fast. Think of your army almost like an Eldar army where you have a low toughness, even though you don't, right? But you have a low minimal amount of models. I had 23. So I know I had to play extra smart, extra cautious, and really position myself really, really well. I think I did that out of 4 out of 5 of my matches. Some of them I had to be a little bit more aggressive than others, like when I went into the Demons, when I went into the Orks, right? I really needed to kill all of those units, those threats, very, very fast. So I knew when to execute my combats. I knew when I needed to get my advances and charges. So keep that in mind. Hopefully everyone here has a wonderful game. Hopefully you have a wonderful time with your World Eaters, and hopefully I gave you the opportunity to learn a little bit more about World Eaters. But before we go, I just wanted to show a sponsor, an individual who was at the event, right, who gave me a wonderful gift. Thank you so much to the Only War Tabletop Terrain Company, right? They were a wonderful bunch of individuals. Shout out to Teddy and Bud. Those individuals was able to gift me a box of terrain. So I'll have an unveiling and unboxing video where I'm going to do a special little commercial for them on the house. I really appreciate them looking out for me and giving me that terrain set. That was very, very kind of them. 2 wonderful individuals. One of them was a veteran. Another one was just a veteran of being an amazing person. Shout out to them. Make sure to go check out their website. I'm going to leave their link under the description sections as well. Go check out their terrain. And thank you so much to everyone for watching this episode. And as always, Onslaught Gaming 40K, where victory is just a strategy away. And don't forget, burn, maim, kill, blood for the blood god. Ah!